The cold November wind cut through my thin suit like knives, but none of it compared to the ache inside my chest. Westview Cemetery sat on a hill that always caught the worst of the Atlanta winds, and today was no different. The sky hung low and gray, as if even the heavens were too heavy with grief to lift themselves. I stood there, a 70-year-old man staring at the casket that held my only son, Andre, 42, strong, healthy, gone. I kept hearing that last word echo in my skull, gone, as if saying it enough times would make it make sense. It didn't. It never would. Around me, the community I'd known for half a century stood shoulder to shoulder. People who had watched Andre grow from a lanky little boy with missing front teeth into the big-hearted man he became. People who knew my late wife Serena, who knew our struggles, our joys, our laughter. Deacon Price stood beside me, his old hand heavy on my shoulder, the weight grounding me. Ms. Alice from next door was sobbing into her handkerchief. Even grown men I'd known since they were toddlers, were wiping their eyes, but not her. Brenda stood stiffly at my side, wearing a designer black dress that hugged her like she wanted the world looking at her instead of the burial. Her shoes had heels too high for a place like this, and those sunglasses, big, shiny, covering half her face, hid everything. Or maybe they hid nothing at all. I watched her from the corner of my eye. She wasn't crying, not a tear, not even a sniffle. While the preacher spoke about returning to glory, I saw Brenda tilt her wrist, check the time on her expensive smartwatch, then swipe at the screen with a manicured thumb painted blood red. She clicked it off like the funeral was an inconvenience she was counting down from. The preacher said, "Amen." People came forward, hugging me, patting my shoulder, whispering prayers. I tried to stay, tried to gather enough strength to say a private goodbye to my boy, but before I could even inhale, Brenda's hand clamped onto my arm. Her nails dug into my coat sleeve. "That's enough, Zay," she whispered. Her voice carried no grief, no softness, no humanity. "Let's go. We have guests." Guests. My son had just been lowered into the dirt, and she was worried about guests. I turned to look at her, really look, and for the first time, I didn't see the woman my son had once loved. I saw something cold, hollow, and sharp. A stranger. The drive home was a silent one. I stared out the window of her car, watching Atlanta blur by, buildings fading into the gray dusk like ghosts. Every memory of Andre, teaching him to fish at Lake Lanier, helping him fix his first car, listening to him laugh, rushed through me like a river trying to overflow its banks. But even that flood couldn't wash away the nagging feeling, scratching at my thoughts. Something about Brenda wasn't right. Something about Marie, the timing wasn't right. Something about Andre's death wasn't right. But grief has a way of blinding you. And that day, I was nearly blind. When we arrived at my bungalow in Sweet Auburn, the smell of collard greens and fried chicken hit me the moment I stepped inside. My neighbors, good people with good hearts, had filled the house with love in the only way they knew how, food. Photos of Andre lined the mantel. Him as a boy, him at prom, him in his mechanic's overalls smiling proudly next to his shop sign. I collapsed into my old armchair, Serena's chair, the one she passed in 10 years ago. It held the shape of my grief. It held the pieces of my broken heart. One by one, visitors hugged me and whispered condolences as they left. "We're praying for you, Brother Coleman. Call me if you need anything, Z. He was a good man, Zay, a real good man." The sun dipped low, casting long, tired shadows across the wooden floor. The murmurs of comfort faded until the house fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. All I wanted was rest. One moment alone with my memories. One quiet breath to steady myself before the next wave of pain hit. But Brenda wasn't done. She walked in from the kitchen, no longer dressed for mourning. She changed into tight jeans and a red sweater that looked more like something you'd wear to a bar than after a funeral. She exhaled, like someone finishing a long shift. "Okay," she said, crossing her arms. "The show's over." The show? My mind was still fogged by sorrow, so at first the words didn't land. They floated there, wrong, off-key, ugly. "The crying," she clarified, her tone flat. "The sad old man routine. All done. We need to talk." I can't talk right now, I muttered, struggling to stand. My knees felt like glass ready to shatter. Brenda, I just buried my son. I know, she replied, completely untouched. But I need you to listen, and I need you to stop crying. Her words hit harder than the wind at the cemetery. Pack your bags, she said slowly, like I was hard of hearing, and get out. My breath caught. Get out? Yes, she said with a small shrug. Get out. I straightened as much as my old spine allowed. Brenda, what are you talking about? This is my home. I built this house with Serena. I raised Andre under this roof. She laughed, actually laughed. A sharp, cold sound that sliced through the room. No, Zay, not anymore. She walked to the drawer where I kept my papers, my safe spot, my important documents, and pulled out a thick folder. She slapped it onto the coffee table. Andre signed this 6 weeks ago, she said, tapping the top page. It's a quit claim deed. He gave me the house. My hands trembled as I reached for my glasses. My heart thudded painfully. I lifted the paperwork, scanning the lines. Grantor, Andre Coleman. Grantee, Brenda Coleman. And at the bottom, a signature. Andre's, or at least something pretending to be. The loops were wrong, the angle wrong, the stroke pressure wrong. Andre had signed thousands of invoices and receipts in his shop. I knew his signature like I knew my own name. This one was wrong. Why would he do this? I whispered. He was in debt, she said calmly. Deep debt. We needed collateral. The house was the only thing he owned. Lies. Bold, ugly lies. Andre wasn't in debt. Hell, I gave him money to start his shop a decade ago, and he paid it back with interest in 5 years. His books were clean. His business was thriving. He would have told me, I said softly. Well, he didn't, she snapped. And now he's dead, which means I'm the owner. I'm selling this dump. I need the money. Dump. She called Serena's kitchen a dump. She called the house where I painted the walls with my wife's favorite color a dump. She called the room where Andre took his first steps a dump. You have 30 days to leave, she said, crossing her arms. 30 days. And if you're not gone, I'll call the Atlanta police and have you removed for trespassing. Do you understand me? I stared at her, my grief turning slowly into something else. Something cold, something sharp. This woman, this stranger, waited until my son was in the ground to reveal her true self. She strutted around my house like she had won something, and I looked down at the paper again. At the forged signature. At the lies written in legal ink. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The trembling in my hands stopped. My back straightened. My breath steadied. My grief didn't fade. It focused. I looked up at her. She expected me to break, to shout, to beg, to collapse at her feet. Instead, I nodded. All right, Brenda. She blinked, confused, completely thrown off balance. All right, just like that? You're not going to fight? If that's what the paper says, I said quietly, then that's what it is. She exhaled in relief, though her eyes narrowed as if she sensed something she couldn't explain. Good. Then we're done here. 30 days. I shook my head. I don't need 30. I walked past her toward my bedroom. She followed, annoyed. What are you talking about? I opened my closet, reached inside, pulled down an old fishing bag, just big enough for a few clothes and important things. I started packing calmly, placing folded shirts inside. She stared at me, baffled. Wait, she said, you're leaving now? Yes. Why'd I said you had 30 days, she snapped. I zipped the small bag, turned to her, and I don't want to spend another night in a house you poisoned. Her eyes widened, not at the accusation, but at how easily I said it. And I don't fight battles in anger, I continued. I fight them in silence. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I stepped past her, bag over my shoulder. On the threshold, I paused and looked back. You should have waited longer before showing your hand, I said softly, at least until the dirt settled. Then I walked out into the freezing November night, and she stood there in my doorway, unable to understand the simplest truth. She thought she had won, but she had no idea who she had just tried to bury along with my son. The motel room smelled like old cigarettes and lemon disinfectant, but it was quiet. Quiet in a way my house hadn't been since Brenda stepped into it like a storm dressed in designer clothes. The motel was a small two-story building off Auburn Avenue, the kind where the sign flickered and the front desk clerk didn't bother asking questions. Perfect. I didn't need sympathy. I didn't need conversation. I needed silence and space to think. I set my fishing bag on the bed. The springs protested beneath the weight. My whole life reduced to a handful of clothes and a small box of memories I'd grabbed before walking out of my own home. Inside the box sat three things: Serena's wedding ring, a photo of Andre as a child holding a baseball glove, too big for his hand, and a folded yellow receipt from when Andre and I rebuilt his first car together. I sat on the bed and stared at the peeling wallpaper. My mind raced. Even at 70, my thoughts were sharper than people assumed. Age may slow the body, but grief sharpens the mind in ways no one expects. Brenda thought she knocked me down. She thought age made me weak. She thought grief made me blind. She was wrong. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. The phone rang twice before a rough voice answered. "Who is this?" "Earl," I said. "It's Zay." A long pause, then a soft exhale. "Lord have mercy, Zay. I heard about Andre. I'm so damn sorry." "Thank you," I said quietly. "What do you need, old friend?" "That depends," I said. "Are you still doing consulting work for the city police?" "Retired," he replied. "But I know people. Why?" I inhaled deeply. "I need help," I said, "and I need it quiet." Another pause. Earl's voice dropped low. "What happened?" I closed my eyes. "I think someone killed my boy." The next morning, I stood outside Andre's mechanic shop, Coleman's Auto Repair. The sign Andre painted himself hung crookedly, the top right corner loose, probably from wind. The shop was closed for the day. The handwritten sign said, "Closed for bereavement." Seeing Andre's handwriting made my throat tighten. I unlocked the door with the spare key from my fishing bag. The air inside smelled of oil, rubber, and metal. Andre's cologne, in a way. The fluorescent lights flickered on as I walked deeper inside. His tools were neatly arranged on the wall, not a single wrench out of place. He was always meticulous about his workspace. That's how I knew something was wrong. On the workbench, a small pile of paperwork sat scattered. Andre never left things undone. He believed in finishing the day clean, tools put away, papers filed. But here, papers were half folded, some stained with the grease, others open like he'd been interrupted mid-organization. I opened the first one, an invoice dated 3 weeks ago, then another and another, all paid, all clean, no debt. So why did Brenda lie? I heard the creak of the shop door and tensed. I wasn't exactly supposed to be in here. "Mr. Coleman?" I turned. It was Jackson, Andre's apprentice. A skinny 25-year-old kid with dreadlocks, nervous eyes, and a heart too soft for mechanic work. He had always looked up to Andre. "You okay, sir?" he asked. "I'm managing," I said. "How you holding up?" He sniffed and wiped his nose. "Trying," he said. "Andre was like a brother to me." I nodded. "I know." Jackson shifted nervously, rubbing black grease between his fingers. Brenda said we can't open the shop again for a bit. She said she'll take care of the business stuff. We just gotta wait." I raised an eyebrow. "Brenda told you that?" He nodded hesitantly. "She also told us not to talk to you," he added softly. "Told us to leave you alone. Said you needed space." A pulse of anger throbbed behind my ribs. "Did she now?" I said calmly. Jackson bit his lip, debating something. His voice lowered. "Mr. Coleman, I don't want to get in trouble, but..." He looked around, then reached into his pocket and handed me a small folded paper. "What's this?" "A message," he whispered. "Andre told me to give it to you if anything ever happened to him." The world froze. Jackson looked terrified. "He said he was scared," Jackson continued. "Said someone was messing with him. Said he'd figured something out but needed time. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. Andre's handwriting. Strong strokes, sharp edges. There were only 4 words. "If something happens, Brenda." My breath caught. Jackson stepped back, eyes darting to the door. "I didn't want to believe it," he said, but he said she was acting weird, that she kept showing up before closing, asking about money, asking about insurance. "Insurance," my mind sharpened like a knife. "You did good telling me," I said, gripping the note. Jackson nodded, eyes watering. I miss him, he whispered. So do I. Leaving the shop, I walked slowly toward the sidewalk, my breath fogged in the cold air. Each step felt heavy with truth. Brenda was lying. She had forged something. She had secrets, and Andre had been afraid. I called Earl again. You find anything yet? He asked. Yes, I said, and I need you to look up something for me. What? Insurance policies, I replied. Any taken out in Andre's name in the last year. Earl whistled through the phone. That's a big search, Zay. I know, I said, but I think my daughter-in-law is hiding something. Send me Andre's full name, birth date, social. I'll text it. And Zay? Yeah? You sure you're ready for what you might find? I looked at the folded note in my hand, at my son's handwriting, at his fear. No, I said, but I don't have a choice. That night, I sat in my motel room with the lamp turned low, scanning old photo albums. Not because I needed to remember no father forgets his child, but because I needed clarity. I needed something that made sense in a world suddenly shredded apart by lies. My phone buzzed. A text from Earl. We need to talk. Call now. My stomach tightened. I dialed immediately. Earl picked up on the first ring. Zay, he said, voice grim. You sitting down? Yes, he exhaled. I found 2 life insurance policies. My hand tightened around the phone. One from years ago, Earl continued. Andre took it out himself. Small one, nothing big. And the other one? I asked. Earl paused. The second one was taken out 5 months ago. 5 months. Right around when Andre started acting different, according to his apprentice. Who's the beneficiary? I asked, though I already knew. Brenda, Earl replied. Only Brenda. And it's big, Zay. It's very damn big. I closed my eyes. How big? 750,000. The motel room spun for a moment. Earl, Andre didn't do that. He wouldn't take out something like that without telling me. He didn't, Earl said quietly. That's the thing. His signature on the insurance form? It's shaky. Off. Might be forged. Forged, just like the deed. And that's not the worst part, Earl said. You ready? Tell me. The policy type, it only pays out for accidental or unnatural death. I froze. Not natural causes, Earl clarified. Not heart attacks, only accidents. Or foul play. My heart stopped. Andre didn't die of an accident, I whispered. They said it was a heart attack. I know, Earl said, which means either the policy doesn't pay or someone planned something. I stood, pacing the small room. Earl, someone killed my son. Earl sighed, old and tired. I think you're right. I stopped pacing. I need to dig deeper, I said. I need to know every detail about his last week, last day, last hours. You're 70, Zay, Earl reminded gently. This is dangerous. So is letting my son's killer walk free. The next morning, I headed to the corner cafe where Andre always grabbed breakfast on Fridays. The owner, Miss Gloria, greeted me with tears in her eyes. Oh, Lord, Zay, she said, pulling me into a hug. I've been praying for you. Thank you, I whispered. Miss Gloria, I need to ask you something. She nodded, wiping her face. Did Andre come in last Friday? She frowned. Yes, but he didn't look good. My chest tightened. What do you mean? He looked sick, she said. Not flu sick, something worse. He was sweating, shaky, said he felt dizzy. Did he eat? No, just water. And that girl came to pick him up. My blood went cold. What girl? Brenda, she said. She came rushing in, grabbed him by the arm, and told him he needed to go home. Her face looked strange, hard. Anger flared in my gut. Did he argue with her? He didn't have the strength. He looked like he was gonna faint. Miss Gloria lowered her voice. And I swear, Zay, he looked scared of her. Something inside me froze. Thank you, I said. I left the cafe and leaned against the brick wall outside, letting the cold air fill my lungs. My thoughts raced faster than my heartbeat. Andre was getting sick. Brenda was watching him. Brenda took him home. And 3 days later, he was dead. This wasn't random. This wasn't chance. This wasn't natural. This was planned. I spent the afternoon retracing more steps. the pharmacy, the liquor store nearby, the bank. At each stop, I found pieces of the same puzzle. Andre withdrew cash 2 days before he died. He bought something from the pharmacy, unknown item, but expensive. A neighbor saw Brenda screaming at him on the porch a week before. Each detail added weight to the truth forming in my chest. Brenda wasn't just cruel. She wasn't just greedy. She wasn't just heartless. She was dangerous. And she thought I was harmless. Old, weak, broken. But she forgot something important. I wasn't just Andre's father. I wasn't just a grieving old man. I was a man with nothing left to lose. That night, sitting on the motel bed, I opened a small notebook and began writing down every detail I'd uncovered. Patterns formed, timelines aligned, motives sharpened. I wrote, insurance policy, forged deed, sudden illness, fear message from Andre, Brenda taking him home when sick, behavior at funeral, lies about debt. Page after page filled up. And then I wrote the 2 words that sealed my resolve. She killed him. I set the pen down, stared at those words, felt a cold stillness settle in my bones. Someone knocked on the motel door. I stiffened. I wasn't expecting anyone. Slowly, I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Earl, I opened the door. You okay? He asked, stepping inside. No, I said honestly, but I know what happened now. He nodded grimly. Zay, I've seen cases like this. It's not easy. It's not quick. And without proof, real proof, she walks away. I'm not going to let that happen. Earl stared at me a long moment. You got a plan? I closed the notebook, looked him dead in the eyes. Yes, I said. I'm going to expose her. How? I gave a thin, cold smile. Quietly. When Earl left, I sat alone again. The motel hum filled the room. Cars passed outside. Somewhere a dog barked. I stared at the ceiling and whispered to the empty room and to my son. I ain't done, boy, not by a long shot. Brenda had started a war she didn't even realize she was in. She thought she threw me out. She thought she humiliated me. She thought she broke me. But all she did was give me space, silence, freedom. And in that silence, I wasn't grieving. I was planning. The rain had been falling for hours, turning Atlanta's early winter evening into a dripping, restless blur. Isaiah Coleman sat inside his dusty sedan parked across the street from Brenda's newly rented townhouse, the windshield wipers squeaking every few seconds as they pushed aside the steady drizzle. He sat still, hands gripping the steering wheel, watching the warm lights spilling out of her windows like a taunt, like she was living in a world that had never been touched by grief. She should have been mourning. She should have been shattered. She should have been thinking about Andre. Instead, she laughed. He could hear it, even from inside the car, a light, sharp laugh that cut through the wet night air every time the door opened and another guest stepped in. Her little party had started an hour earlier. People Isaiah didn't recognize arriving in luxury cars, carrying bottles of wine worth more than his monthly motel bill. Music thumped faintly through the walls of the townhouse, upbeat songs with heavy bass, utterly wrong for a widow less than a month after burying her husband. Isaiah let out a long, shaky breath. Not even pretending, he whispered. He wasn't a man who liked spying. His whole life had been built on honesty, hard work, and giving people the benefit of the doubt. But he'd learned quickly, Brenda didn't deserve the benefit of the doubt. She didn't deserve any softness, not after throwing him out of the house, not after forging documents, and not after lying through her teeth at the funeral. He thought of Andre, his boy's smile, his warm laugh, his trembling hands the night he told his father Brenda was complicated. Isaiah had dismissed it then, thinking every marriage had rough moments. But now, every detail resurfaced in painful clarity. He forced himself out of the car, zipping his jacket against the cold drizzle, and walked down the street toward the townhouse, not to confront her. Not yet. That time would come. Today he needed to know who she was entertaining, who she trusted enough to show her real face to. Isaiah stayed hidden behind the corner of the brick stairwell. A woman in a red dress stumbled out laughing, lighting a cigarette. A man in a suit followed, adjusting his tie with clumsy hands. Brenda appeared behind them, wearing a gold dress so bright it reflected the streetlights. Her face was painted with thick makeup, her hair done in sleek waves, not a trace of grief in sight. "Brenda, you wild tonight," the man slurred. Brenda laughed softly, leaning closer. "You haven't seen Wild yet." Isaiah's jaw tightened. Andre used to look at her like she was his whole world, and she was giving that smile to strangers. He stepped away before she could notice him, walking quickly back toward his car. He didn't want to lose control. Not yet. The next morning, Isaiah woke before dawn in the motel, his back aching from the too soft mattress. But his mission pulled him upright. He had spent the night replaying the party, replaying the guests, replaying everything Brenda had said at the funeral. He took out a small notebook and wrote down a name, James Ellenson. He had overheard the guest in the suit call the woman in red Sandra. He had heard Brenda call the man James or Simon. A quick visit to public records told Isaiah who James was, a real estate agent with a reputation for getting deals done off the books. Someone who could be bribed, someone who could forge, someone who could disappear assets. Andre's house had been transferred suspiciously fast after his death. Isaiah drove across town, found James's office, and waited. When James arrived, Isaiah followed discreetly into the building. The office lights flickered to life, illuminating a room full of awards with hollow meanings. Isaiah walked in calmly. "Mr. Ellenson," he said softly. James looked up, startled. "We're closed. You'll need to make an appointment." Isaiah shut the door behind him. "I know you attended Brenda Coleman's party last night." James froze. Isaiah lowered his voice. "I know you handled the documents for my son's house, a house that should still legally be mine." James swallowed hard, looking everywhere but Isaiah's eyes. "Look, sir, I just notarized what she brought me. She said everything was approved. And you believed her?" Isaiah stepped closer. "Or were you paid to believe her?" James's breath caught. Sweat trickled down his temple. "I didn't poison anyone," he whispered. Isaiah blinked slowly. "Poison?" James flinched, realizing he'd said too much. Isaiah moved closer, voice low. "Tell me exactly what Brenda asked you to do." James's hand trembled as he reached for a drawer, then stopped mid-motion. She told me Andre was signing the house over as a precaution due to financial issues. I never saw him sign it. She brought the paperwork already done. I notarized it." "Forgery," Isaiah murmured. James collapsed into his chair, eyes tired and defeated. "She said something was wrong with him, said he was drinking, that he wanted her to handle everything." "Lies," Isaiah said sharply. James nodded miserably. Isaiah gave him one final warning. "If I call the police, your name goes in every report. If you help me, maybe you walk away clean." James whispered, "What do you need?" The days that followed, Isaiah became a shadow in his own life, moving quietly, listening carefully, remembering everything. He visited Andre's workplace again, cornering the young mechanic named Tyler, who had been nervous the first time. "You sure you told me everything?" Isaiah asked gently. Tyler swallowed. "Sir, I didn't want to get involved, but—" He took a shaky breath. "I heard them fighting, a week before Andre died. He told her he found out about her loan debts. She was screaming, saying he owed her for all the years she wasted on him." Isaiah felt his stomach clench. "And someone else came by," Tyler added quietly. "A big guy with tattoos. He and Brenda argued behind the shop. I caught one sentence. 'If you don't pay, I'll collect in other ways.'" Isaiah closed his eyes. A loan shark, arguments, forgery, suspicious death. Piece by piece, the picture sharpened. The deeper revelation. With James's reluctant help, Isaiah gained access to phone records. Records Brenda didn't know were being watched. Night after night, Isaiah sat at the small motel desk, highlighter in hand, marking call after call to an unknown Atlanta number. A quick search linked it to a man named Terrence T. Marlowe, a documented loan enforcer. Isaiah's breath grew shallow. T. Marlowe was known for intimidation, pressure tactics, and for arranging disappearances. One night, Isaiah found a message on the statement, "Outgoing call from Brenda to T, 3 days before Andre's death, 14 minutes. The same night, Andre had gone to bed early, complaining of stomach pain. Isaiah gripped the paper so tightly it crumpled. "She didn't just betray him," he whispered. "She planned something." He stared at the motel ceiling, feeling the weight of truth settling on his chest like an iron plate. His boy hadn't died from stress. He hadn't died suddenly. He hadn't died naturally. Someone helped him die. Isaiah's grief transformed into something else, a cold, steady determination. Every new clue strengthened him. Every lie exposed sharpened him. Every secret uncovered made him more dangerous. The first real crack in. Brenda. Isaiah waited outside Brenda's work 2 nights later. She exited the building quickly, trying to look composed, but Isaiah immediately noticed the truth. Her hands were trembling. Her eyes darted from car to car. Her phone buzzed repeatedly, and each time she checked it, her mouth tightened. She was afraid. Good. He followed from a distance as she got in her car and drove, speeding through yellow lights, looking in her mirror constantly. She wasn't going home. She was trying to shake someone. She failed. Isaiah kept his headlights low, trailing until she turned into a dark alley behind a closed gym. She stepped out, looking around nervously. A man stepped from the shadows, tattoos curling around his arms, hood up despite the humid night. T. Marlowe. Isaiah pressed himself behind a dumpster, listening. "I said I needed more time," Brenda hissed. T's voice was low. "Time ran out when your husband died. That was supposed to solve everything. You got the house. You got the insurance." Brenda's voice cracked. "The old man is trying to open an investigation. He's digging around." Isaiah felt his heart pound. T scoffed. "Handle him, or I will." Brenda's breath hitched. T stepped closer. "Don't make me clean up 2 messes." Brenda nodded quickly, swallowing fear. Isaiah felt something deep inside him snap. Not in rage, not in panic, but in absolute clarity. He finally understood the danger he was in, and he finally understood something else. Brenda wasn't in control anymore. She was unraveling, and a woman unraveling always slips, always. Isaiah's decision. Back in his motel room, Isaiah sat on the bed, staring at his hands. They were shaking, for the first time in weeks, not from sadness, but from adrenaline. He whispered to the empty room, "Andre, my boy, I'm getting close." He pulled out a folder filled with documents, forged signatures, phone logs, debt records, eyewitness accounts, toxic symptoms Andre showed in his final days, Brenda's rapid property claim, and now her connection with Tia Marlowe. Isaiah closed the folder. He knew what he had to do next. The truth wasn't enough. The truth needed to be used, properly, strategically, quietly. And Isaiah Coleman was no longer just a grieving father. He was a hunter, a patient one, a disciplined one, a deadly one. Brenda's mask had cracked. Soon it would shatter completely. And when it did, Isaiah would be ready. The motel room smelled like old cigarettes and damp carpet, but it was the only place where my mind could finally be silent. For 3 nights straight, I barely slept. I just sat at the little table by the window, Andre's photograph in front of me, and the folder of evidence I'd slowly been building. Papers, screenshots, statements, receipts, each one a tiny splinter of truth that, together, formed something sharp enough to tear our lives apart. But the biggest truth was still buried, in more ways than one. Andre's body. I hadn't wanted to disturb my son's rest. The thought of opening that casket again made something inside my chest twist like a knot. But I couldn't ignore the signs anymore. Healthy men don't just die. They don't sign over houses without telling their father. They don't fall over dead at home with no one around except a wife who suddenly has everything to gain. On the morning of the 4th day, I made the call. Not to the police. Not yet. I called Dr. Namir Hassan, a private forensic pathologist in Decatur. He'd been recommended by Deacon Price's cousin, a lawyer who specialized in wrongful deaths. I explained everything in a steady voice, though my hands were shaking so badly the phone rattled against my knuckles. "I understand," Dr. Hassan said softly. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Coleman. If you truly want the truth, I'm prepared to help you find it." I nodded, though he couldn't see it. "Do what you need to do, Doc." That afternoon, under a gray sky that looked like wet steel, Andre's casket was lifted from the ground. No family was there except me. Brenda didn't even know. I didn't tell her. She didn't deserve to know. I stood under an umbrella as the rain tapped like cold fingers against the fabric. The workers moved quietly, respectfully. When they brought the casket to the small tent where Dr. Hassan waited with his team, the air felt heavier than the dirt around us. I stepped forward and put my hand on the lid. "I'm sorry, son," I whispered, "but I need you to help me one more time." The autopsy took 5 hours, the longest 5 hours of my 70 years. I waited in a hallway outside the examination room, listening to the faint clatter of metal instruments in low voices. I stared at the tiles. I went over every memory I had with Andre. The baseball games, teaching him to shave, watching him build his first engine in the garage. I remembered the day he married Brenda and how something in my stomach twisted even back then, though I ignored it because he loved her. And love makes blind men out of wise ones. Finally, the door opened. Dr. Hassan's face told me everything before he spoke. "Mr. Coleman," he said quietly, "we found something." The room spun, but I stayed upright. What? What was it?" I managed. He motioned for me to follow him into a small office. Papers were laid out. Charts, toxicology results. A word kept appearing over and over. Digitoxin, a cardiac glycoside, a poison, slow, hard to detect, makes the heart stutter, then collapse. Mimics a natural cardiac event if you're not looking closely. Bitter but easy to hide in alcohol, coffee, tea. "How much?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Enough to kill him," Dr. Hassan said gently. "And not all at once. This was administered over time. Days, possibly weeks." My chest tightened. Weeks. Right around the time Brenda started visiting his shop more often. Right around the time he told me he'd been feeling tired but brushed it off. Right around the time she suddenly took out that secret life insurance policy. It all snapped together in my mind like puzzle pieces that had been scattered deliberately. "Someone did this on purpose," I said, the words falling heavy. Dr. Hassan didn't answer. He didn't have to. I closed my eyes. "Thank you, doctor," I said finally. I needed the truth, no matter how ugly it was. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "I'll write the full report. You'll have everything you need." Everything I needed. Yes, everything. I left the clinic with the report in my hand and a storm in my chest. The Atlanta evening was cold, the wind biting at my face, but I hardly felt it. I got into my truck, Andre's truck, really, and sat for a long moment, staring at the dashboard he used to polish like it was a newborn baby. "You didn't just die, boy," I said softly. "Somebody killed you." And that somebody was sleeping in my house, eating from my kitchen, wearing clothes bought with my son's blood. Brenda. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel. It was time. The next morning before sunrise, I went to visit an old friend, Samuel Hawk Hawkins. He wasn't a shady man, not in the way criminals are. He was a retired Atlanta PD detective who'd solved cases that still made the news during Black History Month specials. Hawk was one of the smartest men I'd ever known, and one of the most dangerous to the guilty. I found him in his backyard sharpening a hunting knife on a whetstone. He didn't look surprised to see me. "You got that look," Hawk said without turning around. "What look?" "The look of a man who found the truth and wishes he hadn't." I sat down on the porch steps. "Hawk, they poisoned him." He stopped sharpening. He looked up slowly. "What did the report say?" I handed it to him. He read every line with the intensity of a man who had spent decades hunting liars. "Digitoxin," he muttered. "Someone knew what they were doing." He closed the folder. "Tell me everything, Zay." I did. From the forged deed to the lies about debt, to the insurance policy, to Brenda's shopping sprees, to the loan shark, rumors. When I finished, Hawk exhaled slowly. "That woman didn't just want the house," he said. "She wanted the money, the assets, the life insurance, and she wanted your son out of the way." "Can we prove it?" I asked. "Oh, we're gonna prove it," Hawk said, "but we're gonna do it smart." For the next 4 hours we worked. Hawk taught me how to request cell tower pings legally, how to gather bank statements, how to gather witness statements quietly. We found her search history on a shared device Andre used at the shop. digitoxin dosage information, how to falsify signatures, how to speed up probate. It was all there. She hadn't just killed Andre, she'd planned it, down to the minute. Hawk looked at me over the papers. You know what this means, right? He said. What? She didn't act alone. He tapped a page. She needed a supplier. Digitoxin doesn't just fall off a tree. Somebody helped her. A chill went down my spine. The loan shark. The man she'd been meeting. The one who'd been seen arguing with Andre in the parking lot. We had a name now. Dorian Big Doe Malloy. And Big Doe was known for two things: settling debts and making problems disappear for a price. Andre wasn't in debt, I whispered. No, Hawk said. But Brenda was. He stood. Let's go pay Doe a visit. We found Big Doe at a low-end nightclub he owned on Memorial Drive, the Neon Falcon, a dirty place where music thumped so hard the walls vibrated. Inside, cigarette smoke hung thick in the air. Hawk flashed his old badge, and the bartender nodded nervously toward the back. Doe was sitting in a VIP booth, a mountain of a man in a leather jacket, covered in gold chains, laughing with two women. Hawk approached calmly. Evening, Doe. Doe's smile faded. Well, I'll be damned. Detective Hawkins, shouldn't you be in a rocking chair somewhere? Retirement's boring, but I got a question for you. Doe snorted. Ain't got nothing to say to no cop. You'll want to answer this, Hawk said, stepping closer. Because right now, what I got is enough to bring down your whole operation. Doe's eyes narrowed. What operation? The one where you helped a woman poison her husband. Doe froze. The women beside him looked confused. Hawk leaned in. We know about the digitoxin. We know about the meetings with Brenda Coleman. We know you paid off a pharmacist at that clinic in Decatur, and we know she owed you money. Doe shifted in his seat. I didn't kill nobody. No, Hawk said, but you supplied her, and she killed Andre Coleman. Then Hawk stepped aside, and I stepped forward. Doe stared at me. You're Andre's old man, he said slowly. Yes, I said quietly. A long, tense silence followed. But then something changed in Doe's eyes, a flicker of fear. You don't understand, he said quickly. I didn't think she'd actually do it. She said she just needed something to calm him down. He was stressing out the marriage. You know how women talk. Don't, I said, my voice sharp as glass. He swallowed. I can give you her messages, Doe said. I kept everything. I knew she was lying. I kept records. All of it. Her texts, her calls. She came to me begging for that stuff. She said Andre was going to divorce her and she was going to lose everything. Hawk crossed his arms. Why didn't you stop it? Doe rubbed his face. Because she paid me, old man. Money talks. But I didn't know she went that far. He pulled out his phone. I'll send you every message chain. And he did. When the data downloaded into Hawk's phone, he nodded once. That's enough, he said. We got her. Doe leaned back in his booth. You ain't gonna tell nobody I talked, right? Hawk smirked. Thanks for your cooperation, Doe. Then we left. That night, I sat in my truck outside my house, watching the lights inside flicker. Brenda was moving around the kitchen, laughing on the phone, sipping wine like she hadn't killed the man who loved her. The rage in my chest burned so hot it felt cold, but I didn't go inside. Not yet. This wasn't the moment. This wasn't justice. Justice would come in a different way, a legal, devastating, undeniable way. And when Brenda finally saw me, saw what I had, when she realized the empire she'd tried to build on my son's grave was about to crumble, I wanted to see her face. I wanted to see the moment she understood that she hadn't just underestimated an old man. She'd awakened him. I put the truck in gear, drove back to the motel, and placed all the evidence in a single thick folder. The autopsy, the toxicology, the messages, the bank records, the forged signature analysis, and at the top of the stack, a photo of Andre smiling. I whispered to it, rest easy now, boy. Daddy's coming for her. Tomorrow morning, I was meeting with Hawk again. Tomorrow morning, we were going to the police. And tomorrow morning, Brenda Coleman's life was going to end the same way she had ended Andre's. Slowly, quietly, and with absolutely no warning. The morning the truth finally rose into daylight, Atlanta was wrapped in a soft, pale fog, the kind that makes the world feel quiet and expectant, like it knows something heavy is about to happen. I hadn't slept. I sat on the edge of the motel bed with the folder in front of me, every piece of evidence tucked neatly inside like a set of nails for the coffin Brenda had built with her own hands. At exactly 6:30 a.m., my truck engine rumbled awake. I drove to Hawk's house. He was already outside, dressed in a clean button-down shirt and slacks, his badge clipped to his belt, even though he'd been retired 5 years. Sometimes, he'd told me once, a badge still speaks louder than a gun. He opened the passenger door and slid in. "You ready?" he asked. I nodded once. "Good," he said. "Let's finish this." We pulled up to the Atlanta Police Department just before 7. The building looked colder than usual, its concrete walls gray out under the low clouds. Hawk led the way inside, greeting the front desk officer, a young woman with bright eyes who instantly straightened up when she saw him. "Detective Hawkins, didn't expect to see you back." "Temporary resurrection?" Hawk grinned. "Need to talk to Captain Rhodes, now." She nodded and made the call. 2 minutes later, Captain Deborah Rhodes, a tall, sharp-eyed woman with 30 years of service under her belt, stepped into the lobby. "Hawk," she said, raising an eyebrow, "you look like trouble walked in with church shoes." Hawk inclined his head toward me. "This is Isaiah Coleman. And what he has? You're going to want a private room." Rhodes looked at me, really looked, and something in her eyes softened. "Follow me." Room 2B was small, empty, and quiet with a metal desk and 2 chairs. I took the seat closest to the wall. Hawk set the thick folder between us and tapped it once with 2 fingers. "This," he said, "is the murder of Andre Coleman." Rhodes didn't speak. She opened the folder, eyes moving fast but deeply, taking in every page. The autopsy, the handwriting comparison, the text messages between Brenda and Big Doe, the bank transfers, the insurance documents, Brenda's forged signature, the timing, the toxin, and finally the photograph of Andre smiling in front of his garage, grease on his shirt. Rhodes sat back slowly. "This is airtight," she said. "I don't bring holes," Hawk replied. She closed the folder. "You want us to bring her in?" I shook my head. "No, I want you to arrest her. Proper, legal, public, no deals." Rhodes nodded. "And the supplier?" Hawk smirked. Doe folded. "He's ready to spill names for a lighter charge." "Good," Rhodes said. "This ends today." She stood, opened the door, and called out, "Get me a warrant, yard team. Full force. We're picking up Brenda Coleman." A convoy of 5 police SUVs rolled down Auburn Avenue like a storm. Sirens off, lights cold and blue. I followed behind them in my truck, hands tight on the wheel, heart pounding like a war drum. I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. The fear had burned out of me days ago, replaced by something sharper. Something carved from grief and truth. When we turned onto my street, I saw Brenda through the kitchen window. She was wearing a silk robe, hair tied up neatly, sipping tea. As she scrolled through her phone with a lazy look on her face, she didn't know the world was about to collapse under her feet. The SUV stopped hard at the curb. Doors flew open. Officers moved fast, forming a circle around the house. Captain Rhodes approached the porch with 2 officers. "Brenda Coleman," she called. "Atlanta PD. We have a warrant for your arrest." Inside, I saw her freeze. Then she came into view, confusion twisting her face. "Arrest for what?" she shouted through the door. "Open the door," Rhodes commanded. Brenda hesitated. Then she locked the deadbolt. Bad decision. One officer swung the battering ram. The door cracked inward with a loud boom. Brenda stumbled backward, slippers skidding on the hardwood floor. Wait, what is this? What are you doing?" "Brenda Coleman," Rhodes said, pulling out the handcuffs. "You are under arrest for the murder of Andre Coleman, fraud, forgery, insurance tampering, and elder abuse." "What? No!" She tried to step back, but the officers moved in quickly, grabbing her arms. "This is a mistake. I didn't kill anyone. Andre had a heart attack." "You poisoned him," Rhodes said flatly. Brenda went white. I didn't. Who told you that? Who told you that?" I stepped through the doorway. Her eyes landed on me. Pure rage, pure terror. You, she whispered. You did this. No, I said quietly. You did this. You old bastard, she screamed, fighting the cuffs. You ruined everything. He was supposed to die and… She stopped, realizing too late she had said too much. Rhodes looked at her sharply. Thanks for the confession, the captain said. Brenda's mouth hung open. She tried to backtrack. No, I didn't mean he… But it was over. They marched her out of the house. She twisted, trying to find footing, but her slippers scraped against the porch. Neighbors had gathered outside. Ms. Alice from across the street covered her mouth with her hand. Deacon Price bowed his head. What is she being arrested for? Someone whispered. Murder, another murmured back. Brenda turned, eyes wild. You'll pay for this, she screamed at me. You think you can just walk away? You think you can… Get her in the car, Rhodes had said. Two officers pushed her into the back of the SUV. The door slammed shut. The moment her screams were silenced, the entire street seemed to exhale. Hawk came up beside me. You did good, Zay. I nodded once. She won't get out? Not a chance, Hawk said. With the evidence you have and Doe turning witness, she's done. Life, minimum. Good, I said. The last police SUV pulled away. The street grew quiet again, and I stood there, staring at the empty space where my door had been torn, open, feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. Over the next days, everything unfolded fast. Brenda cracked during interrogation. She tried blaming Doe. She tried claiming Andre hit her. She tried saying the poison was an accident. Nothing worked. Every lie she told contradicted the last. Doe, fearing a life sentence, traded full cooperation for a deal. He handed over. The pharmacist he bribed, the texts where Brenda planned the dosage, the money transfers, the fake loan documents Brenda invented, even photos of Brenda handing him cash. The district attorney took one look at the combined evidence and said, "This is one of the clearest murder-for-profit cases I've seen in 20 years. Within a week, a judge signed an emergency injunction. The quitclaim deed was declared fraudulent, null, void, illegal. My house was mine again. Not because I fought with fists, not because I begged, but because truth, once uncovered, is heavier than any lie. The afternoon I walked back into my home, my real home. I moved slowly, almost reverently. The sunlight filtered through the windows, touching the wooden floors I had laid with Serena 50 years ago. The walls still smelled faintly of fried catfish from the last Sunday dinner Andre cooked here. I touched the kitchen counter. I touched the living room wall where Andre's height had been measured in pencil marks. I touched the armchair where Serena used to knit. And then I walked down the hallway to Andre's old room. The door creaked open. Inside, nothing had changed. His old posters still hung on the wall. His first baseball glove sat on the shelf. The model car we built together when he was 10 sat untouched in a glass box. I sat on the edge of the bed. The sunlight hit the room just right, dust drifting like gold flecks. I did it, boy, I said quietly. We did it. And for the first time since the day he died, I felt him near. Not in pain, not in confusion, but at peace. 3 months later, the trial began. It lasted 11 days. The courtroom was packed. News cameras lined the hallway. Reporters wrote headlines. Wife accused of poisoning mechanic husband for insurance money. Retired Atlanta father helps crack murder case. Digital evidence and autopsy reveal shocking truth. Brenda sat at the defense table, pale and defeated. She didn't look at me. Not once. She didn't speak except to whisper to her lawyer. Doe testified calmly, throwing her completely under the bus. Dr. Hassan delivered the autopsy findings. Captain Rhodes presented the forged deed. Hawk presented the digital trail linking Brenda to the pharmacist. When I took the stand, I spoke only once, softly. Andre was my son. He was a good man, and he didn't deserve what happened to him. Brenda glared at me. The jury saw it. The judge saw it. Everyone saw it. On the 11th day, the jury returned. Guilty on all counts. Brenda screamed. It didn't matter. She was sentenced to life without parole, plus 20 years for fraud. It was over. Truly over. 6 months after the verdict, I stood on my porch in Sweet Auburn, watching the sunrise. The air was warm, carrying the smell of magnolias from Miss Alice's yard. The house was quiet, peaceful. I held a photograph of Andre in my hand. "I miss you," I said, "but I kept my promise." I lifted my face to the sun, and now I'm going to live again. Because justice, when done right, isn't loud, it isn't violent, it doesn't rush. Justice walks slow, but it always arrives. And when it does, it stands tall,